Okay, Mark, welcome to the Volvo Ocean Race. Thanks for allowing us some time to speak to you. I know you've been really busy since you've been here. What was it about the Volvo Ocean Race and this challenge that appealed to you?
The Volvo Ocean Race for me is probably two different things. It's on a personal front. When I was 22 years old, I raced it, my first big adventure in my life. So to come back, full circle via Dongfeng Race Team in the last race, that's a journey in itself on a personal front. But from a professional perspective, I've been working in the sport of sailing and other sports, but the sport of sailing for 2 or 3 decades, and I've touched on most areas: teams, inshore, offshore, all different events. I've created events, created teams, lost races, won races, all of it with connected by sponsorship along the way. And the Volvo Ocean Race for me represents a bit of a summum of all those things. Remains to be seen how what I can contribute to it, but to be able to bring together all my different experiences and hopefully some skills and ideas and put it into what is the most significant event in the sport is a great, both a great honour, to be honest, but also it's a great opportunity because the platform is of sufficient scale that I think we can do some very big things with it. And in some ways, everything I've done up to now, I've loved fighting just to exist and to survive in every week, but never really had a significant enough resources to do big things with it, really big things, beyond perhaps Ellen MacArthur, which became a very big thing 15 years ago. So it's a great opportunity for me. It's a great platform, but if I didn't have that personal connection to it in the first place, I probably wouldn't be the right person for it. But the combination of the two hopefully can produce some good results.
You mentioned your career across the whole sport of sailing. What is it about the Volvo Ocean Race that you think makes it unique within the sport?
I think there are probably only 2, for me, big events in the sport that have this strong ability to engage people, the emotional side of it. And they're both offshore races, and the other one is the Vendée Globe, which is an extraordinary event as well. And it's because you have this crossover in both those events. You have this crossover of the human aspect, which become adventure, human, this side of it, overlap with an extremely high sporting level. And the people that are there, more so in the Volvo Ocean Race than perhaps the entire fleet of Vendée Globe, are there to win. And the combination of being desperate to win and doing everything to win, with the fact that even if you just sailed around the world, it's a pretty interesting human challenge. Those two things mapped over the top of each other is what creates this cocktail of emotion and stories and ups and downs, and that's what in all sport makes for all sports, that's what makes it work, and that's what's so fascinating I think about the Volvo Ocean Race, about racing around the world. On top of that, with the Volvo Ocean Race, you have the fact that you've got this relatively large team in a very small space, and the team dynamics and how actually to win you have to make that team work very well.
Obviously, it's kind of the $1 million question for everyone who's working in sailing. How do you jump outside of the bubble and take the sport to the next level into the mainstream? What do you think that makes the Volvo Ocean Race such a compelling event around the world for people outside of the sailing fraternity?
Well, I think one of the first things I do need to do is get a clearer understanding or vision on what actually is the goal, because in reality, are we really trying to tell the same number of people about sailing that the FIFA World Cup will do? There isn't any other sport that will touch that number of people. So first of all, we think we need to be realistic about what we're actually aiming to do. That said, I think that offshore sailing, the Volvo Ocean Race, has the ability to touch everybody. There's a technical aspect to it which will touch a certain slice. There are elements that will only touch certain parts of society, but ultimately the notion of sailing around the world and the human aspect of that is a story that can actually touch everyone. You have the capacity to touch everyone. Whether we really want to focus on, want to have the idea that we've got to touch everyone, I'm not sure we possibly do. We need to do perhaps a smaller number of things a lot better. One thing about sailing, and particularly offshore sailing, is that you can engage people on many levels. So you can, first of all, who's winning, who's losing, right the way through down a few hundred layers to the ins and outs of the chess game, the tactics, the technology on the boats, everything. And what's fascinating is to see when you touch someone, for which you need a relatively wide, reach to get people in the first place, but then you draw them down through that. I know that's been the objective in the past. I think that's what we have to find a way of doing better, and keeping people on board. What you do have with a 9-month race is you have time to really pull people in and keep them there for a long period, which is incredibly valuable from a sponsorship perspective.
Just switching to focus on the role itself, obviously Knut's the outgoing CEO. You've worked with him for a long time, a very well respected guy. You said yourself you've got some fairly big shoes to fill. What strengths do you think you bring to the role of CEO, and what is your kind of management style? How would you describe it?
Well, I think first of all, Knut has done a fantastic job, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't stepping into what is already a good organisation with some great motivated people with a good starting point. I'm probably a little bit late in my career to have taken it on if it was a mess, and that's not the case. So there are undoubtedly some big challenges that Knut would have had to reface again quite soon. Knut and I have been on the same page on 99 out of 100 things in the last few years that we've got to know each other quite well, and that for me is a pretty good starting point. I don't need, if I didn't do anything, I know that the show is on the road and the event will happen, even if there was no new CEO right now. So I'm pretty sure about that, and that's a great thing, because what I hopefully can do is come in and have enough time and energy to be thinking of how we need to do it differently, how to address the longer term question beyond the 2017-18 race, and that's what I certainly need to contribute most on. The differences between Knut and I are probably that my focus has always been a bit more on the communication side, and that's what I've always loved, and it's the access point for me for engaging more people, and ultimately engaging and inspiring more people is the reason we're here. So, and I will undoubtedly spend a bit more time on that, and I've had probably a bit of a wider experience than Knut on that aspect, and there are other areas with undoubtedly stronger than me. I think, and then apart from anything else, I hope to keep Knut as much involved as I can as well. So he's undoubtedly a sounding board for me going forward. So there's no question about that. I'm driven personally by this inspiring people. I mean, that is what drives me, and I'll have a tear in my eye when I see someone on getting an Olympic medal, even if they're from a country that I've never heard of. So I'm inspired by that, and I like to have an impact on people in that way, whether that's convincing someone to ride their bike up a hill that they never thought they could get up in their life, or whether we're inspiring school kids in the middle of China because they've got themselves some new heroes for and mentors in their life because they've watched this Chinese sailor go around the world for the first time. And the Volvo Ocean Race, the platform has all these characters and ability to go out and inspire people just to do something a bit more in their life, and that I hope I can transmit that same feeling into the team that work here, and equally through them out to as many people as possible, the people that we're looking to touch. So it's a hard one, in the process of getting here. I've had some interesting interviews and first time psychology tests and things. I've been my own boss for 23 years, so quite an interesting process, but actually it was a very good process, because as part of that, there's quite a lot of assessment of also exactly that question, or what is it that thing, and it's helped me understand a little bit that, and I hope I can continue to be a good leader in that respect and be able to touch people emotionally and get that bit more from people, because it is about the energy and emotion that makes you want to come to work at the end of the day. It's not a job. This is not a job. It's not a normal job, that's for sure.
You've just mentioned what you're leaving behind in terms of OC Sport. Obviously, you started the company from scratch and you built it up through a lot of hard work and intensity and drive and focus. Do you expect it to be a relatively easy transition into this role because you're already working in the circles and you've been working with the race for so long? And what do you expect from the next kind of 6 months to a year?
Well, so I'm not actually meant to start this job until 7th of June, so I've got a few weeks to go here, but I've been here for a couple of days, and I am very at home in this new family environment. Personally, I am genuinely relaxed because I think I know most of the subjects. I don't feel there are plenty of areas I've got lots to learn on, but I understand. I know what all the elements are. I think there's some elements of being, the event is owned, obviously by Volvo. There's some elements I've got to learn in that respect, but the last 7 years of OC Sport, I've had external shareholders, board meetings, and that side of it. So I understand all of those dynamics. It's a very wide job. It's a very complex event in some ways, and very simple in others. One difference is that OC Sport, effectively, albeit at different scales to the Volvo Ocean Race, have had multiple sports in multiple offices in multiple types of events. So I've been very split across different things, even if I've not tried to cover all of them. And I do relish this position in the aspect of being able to focus on one event. That's for me is a real attractive part of this role.
Obviously, we briefly touched on the fact that your association with this race goes way back to 1989. Can you just talk us briefly through that experience for you? The people you sailed with and how it affected your life, and then you following the race up to this point and how the events evolved to where we are now.
I was 21 years old when I joined British Defender for the 1989 Whitbread around the world race, which has become the Volvo Ocean Race. And what an experience! I was at age 21 to do that. I didn't do the whole race, so I raced as far as Auckland, and then I had to return to the Navy and return to a warship. And I actually watched British Defender limp by with a broken mast off Portland Bill on the final leg of the race, sitting in a warship in a simulated attack with a gas mask on the bridge of a warship. So it's a very strange end to the Whitbread for me. But it was an extraordinary, for me it was an extraordinary experience at 21. Just to travel, just even to go to Uruguay and then Australia and New Zealand. It was amazing. And the race, 1989 race, was the turning point for the race. Really, it was where it switched to becoming a majority, mainly professional event. Peter Blake, will always be my big hero in my life. So, and Steinlager 2 campaign was just exemplary in every respect, and that really had an impact on me. And I loved what they did. And of course we were miles behind them as well. So, I'd love to have been to sail that as well as them as well. But it was so it had a big impact on me. I went back to the Navy, and I actually, I left the Navy 6 months later and went and started up. I helped a friend of mine start up a company. So it was a total game changer for me, and it was because I had seen how much potential there was out there in the world, and I wanted to have a wider set of a wider view of the world than the Royal Navy was going to give me. But I had no regrets, about that step either. So, but no question, the race changed my life. I changed my direction in life, and certainly wouldn't be here today without it. So.
And now, of course, the modern day Volvo Ocean Race is a real force in terms of hospitality and bringing businesses together and people together, networking. What do you think is so unique about the race from a business-to-business perspective? We broke all records last race, 71,000 corporate guests through the doors. What is it, having worked with Dongfeng on that side of things, what do you think it is that is so attractive?
Well, firstly, there is one additional thing that is very attractive about the event to me, which is that it is 100% commercially funded. And I had an opportunity to be involved in America's Cup 6-7 years ago in the same role, basically, which in the end I didn't do. And the Cup is a great event, but the one thing that mixes it up is that there's a lot of private money involved in it, and which is great, and some people enjoy that environment. For me, the environment of the Volvo Ocean Race, where we succeed or fail on the basis of it working financially, economically, in terms of return for every single stakeholder that comes in, whether it's on the event side, whether it's Volvo or the other event partners or the team sponsors, that really appeals to me because there's some logic in there. We can do something about it, and that is super appealing. And why does it work? Why have we got these brands in there, and hopefully a lot more in the future? It's because fundamentally of the experience I think that sailing can provide. That people can touch it, people can get on the boat, they can experience an element, a slice of the thrill of it. And with technology, equally, we're sharing more and more what's happening when the boat's left the port and it's racing across the ocean as well. So people can more and more touch it and feel it and just get this kind of little slice of it. And I think that's where generally for sailing, so it's just not just the Volvo Ocean Race, but generally for sailing, the B2B aspect or the client engagement aspect of it is second to none. And I don't know if another sport can really rival it, to be honest. So I think the evolution the Volvo Ocean Race has been to focus progressively more on that. It doesn't mean it's not interesting for consumer brands, because we've got an event with scale that goes around the world, that touches a lot of markets with a lot of emotion. So there's great potential for consumer brands, but without doubt the focus on on brands that have a business to business element, which are quite often consumer brands as well, is the right one, because sailing is a unique proposition in that respect. You can't do the same thing very easily with football or many other, let's call them mainstream sports. So there's no doubt about that being the right focus. And we have a great product already. I think we can do 3-4 times better than we're doing right now in terms of that experience, and separate ourselves even more from the other offers on the market.
Okay, obviously you worked really closely with Dongfeng in getting the boat, the Chinese entry into last race. What is so attractive to team title sponsors in this race, and what are some of the benefits that you get that you wouldn't get in other sports particularly?
Working with Dongfeng was particularly interesting because you have a Chinese sponsor who had never done sponsorship before, never done sport, and absolutely never done sailing before. And we had to prove that it worked. Hopefully they'll be back the next time. It looks good for now, and they were back because it genuinely worked for them, and on lots of different fronts. So yes, there is a communication message and a media footprint which does matter, and it matters to all sponsors in some way. So that was important, but really their ability for them to take their potential dealers, their potential clients, and media in their sector, and get them on a boat and get them into the adventure and follow it was what really hooked them in. And what was interesting is we were able to take people who actually didn't have much language in terms of being able to follow the race, no knowledge of sailing, and bit by bit get them more and more engaged, both internally and externally at Dongfeng. So it was a very good case study really, because it really is take from zero and show that the sport can really engage both internally and externally, and clients, and whether that's bringing guests. I mean, we had guests from countries that have probably never experienced any kind of professional sailing before, particularly in the Abu Dhabi stop, just pulling people in from countries all over that region, and absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic reactions, and we'd help them develop client relationships which they simply couldn't have bought with advertising or anything else. And that's the nature of sponsorship in general, but particularly sailing sponsorship, is you're able to, for a fraction of the cost, go and create relationships, either whether it's the public or whether it's a client, a B2B client, that you simply can't buy. You can advertise all you like to say that Dongfeng is a nice Chinese company that builds great products, but until you actually can spend a day with someone, they experience something, you share a bit of emotion, and then actually they follow it for the next few months to the end of the race or beyond. And they're disappointed when the race ends. And we have some amazing emails like that, what am I going to do? The race has ended, from clients of our sponsors. So that's what sailing can do very, very well, and can do better. And is quite different to the normal sort of hospitality offering of going and watching a football match or a Grand Prix or anything else, which all have good sides to them. But I think that's where sailing can just engage people for much longer and much deeper. And that's ultimately what sponsors need, what companies need to do with their clients. And we're a tool. It could be any other sport, but I think sailing does it particularly well.
Now, obviously, we've had a lot of questions come through with the M word, multi-hull. A lot of people are asking if that's if we're going to join other events in going down the multi-hull route. Obviously, you may not necessarily have an answer for that now, but where do you see the race going over the next kind of 5-10 years?
I don't have a clear vision right now where we're going to go with the race. I certainly have ideas, I certainly have questions, and we need to develop that vision fairly quickly. So multi-hulls, monohulls, I've always very firmly believed that it isn't actually specifically about the boat. But you just need the right tool for the job. So if our job is to entertain, and we define who we're trying to entertain, then go and look at what is the product that needs to work, that needs to make that work. In Extreme Sailing Series that we developed OC Sport, there was only really one solution, and it was to go to a multi-hull, because we needed something that excited the public who didn't know anything about sailing. We needed a guest experience that was something out of the ordinary that money couldn't buy, and we could never have created that event and developed that event with a monohull. It doesn't mean that you can't build the right kind of monohull and have an absolutely great Volvo Ocean Race. I think it's definitely still an option, and it's an option to continue with this existing boat for longer. Everything's on the table right now for sure. The one thing that has changed though is that in terms of cutting edge sailing, it's a transformation. We're not just a multi-hulls, we're in foiling multi-hulls, and it seems quite hard to ignore that question. So I don't think there's any kind of review of the strategy and development of long-term vision that doesn't include as an option to go to some kind of large multi-hull or small multi-hull. But you have to absolutely look at that and consider it. I think the other thing is the fact that most of it's not always good to necessarily follow, but you have to take notice of what's going on out there. You mustn't just follow what the sailors want, with all due respect, because usually they're not often are they adding up how much it costs and working out whether it actually stacks up commercially. But you do need the sailing world to be excited about what you're doing. I think the Volvo Ocean Race is already exciting in whatever boat it would be, and the one design decision has absolutely been the right thing. So we have a great product for 2017, but we need sailors to be excited and desperately seeking what's going to happen, after that. And is it something they really want to go and do as well? It's a necessary condition, but it's not the reason. You never decide what you're going to do based on what the sailors want to go and sail. But we absolutely have to take into account. And when we come to the next race, every other major event in the sport will be in a multi-hull and foiling. In reality, it's pretty well. So we have to take that into account. We have to see how we adapt our event or not to that new scenario. Maybe there's a most amazing monohull that we could do that actually makes much more sense. It's definitely all on the table right now. But yeah, of course, big foiling multi-hull, it's on that list. We need to look at it.
I know one of the things that we're especially keen to do is to really engage and excite the sailing community, maybe in the way that they were in the old days with the Whitbread, Sir Peter Blake, in that era. As a sailing fan yourself, what are you most excited about next race? Which evolution most excites you?
I guess we haven't got yet to what are those big evolutions. I think that's for me. Most of my work needs to look up beyond this next race, but we need in the next 12 months next six months to really work on what things we change and develop. But your actual question of if re-engaging perhaps at a higher level the sailing community, I'm not sure we necessarily need loads of evolutions or changes. We just do need to remember that we should look after that community. And in a very understandable quest to go to a much wider audience, because you have to make it add up financially in terms of it working for the brands that are involved and everything else. We have perhaps necessarily along the way decided not to make enough effort in communicating in a way or putting the tools in place for people who already are at level 10 of understanding. And the reason why I think it's important is because I really, during the last Volvo Ocean Race, the CEO of Dongfeng started at level 1. He didn't understand anything. But I can tell you by leg 3 or 4, he was as knowledgeable as a large part of the sailing community in the world. And he wanted to understand more. So we need to communicate also those next levels to help people understand what's really going on. Because the fascinating thing about sailing is the chess game and the tactics and the interaction of wind, waves, sea, speed, teamwork, all those things. So we need to get closer, we need to dig deeper, we need to be able to share more of that for the sailing community, but I think actually in any case, for our fans and stakeholders who progressively, during what is quite a long race, just learn more and more and get more and more engaged. People want to understand why a boat's going left or right on the tracker, not just that they're in third place. So we've got to address that, and it's something we have to do better, is get the sailing world to care, to care again a bit more about it. It's not that they don't care, it's not there aren't people following, that's not the case, but we have to do better for sure. And that will help us. And amongst that sailing community, there are some pretty extraordinary people, kings, princes, CEOs of big companies, everything else. So from a business perspective, it does matter, and we do need to do better.